Good evening, everyone. Thank you so much. My name is Malika Lee Whitney, and I will be moderating the panel. And let's give another round of warm welcome for these creative folks. Confusion Nawa. As I was watching it, among the many things that I thought, it looked like a space for some serialization because there were so many multiple storylines happening. So let me introduce everyone who's on stage. You see his face, so I'll have to remove the character from the one who's sitting here. Once again, Kenneth Gyang, the director. Tom Rowlands-Rees, producer and co-writer. And O.C. Ukeje, the actor. Earlier on, when I was speaking to Kenneth, I said something about storytelling, and there may be a few folks out there who know that's one of the things that I do. And I wondered how, since traditional African storytelling is the foundation for so much life, how does modern day media and interpretation of life as represented in this film connect for you, Kenneth?
Hi, good evening. Okay, so basically, I'm actually going to say that most of us, storytelling in Africa, we always draw back to our roots. And so I know there's this whole explosion of new media and things like that, but it actually has to do with our roots, where we're coming from, and whatever we're telling stories, we have to still connect it to where we're actually coming from. And that, for me, is really key when you're telling a story.
Watching the credits, I noted that it's a project that's had other lives. So I'm wondering, in terms of the writing, how the original story played out versus what the screenplay evolved into.
That's a good question, and actually I'd have to reread. So the story behind the story for people who are less familiar with the project. Originally there was a script called My Culture, written by a friend of Kenneth's called Kepi. We looked at it and we liked certain aspects of it, but wanted to develop it into something different using some of the characters and situations. I suppose really where a lot of the sort of extra work into the script went was in making it all sort of, we really wanted to make it so interlinking that it all fitted together neatly. And so for us, sort of working on developing a new screenplay was like creating a jigsaw puzzle. And that was sort of, I suppose, a big part of the change. I mean, some of the other things that we added in was a lot of the comedy aspects. There was a storyline in the original one. So the two characters, Charles and Chi-Chi, were there. There were these two guys who like to get high. There was Emeka, who was having an affair. There was also the family where the son, in this story, original story, there was a son, and he actually was gay. But I found it a little bit sort of extreme. So when we reworked it, we sort of said, why don't we have a storyline where it's not even clear whether he's gay or not, although we wanted to address that. And to sort of almost make it that it wasn't a preachy storyline. I mean, obviously by the end, the guy has lost so much sight of what is right and wrong that he's taking his son to a brothel. But the idea was that we like, irrespective of, you know, how you feel about homosexuality, and obviously it being here in the West, we all sort of might feel we have a sort of a fairly uniform view on it, but it's not the same in Nigeria. We wanted a story that would be appreciated irrespective of your feelings on that subject. So that was sort of one of the major things we changed as well.
Well, I'm sure when I turn the questions over to the audience, there'll be a lot of elaboration on that. But for OC, there were a lot of colloquial expressions, and I happened to be blessed by sitting behind some folks who seemed to get everything. And there were a couple of words and expressions and being a little leery of my misspelling, I wanted to know about the choices, to use them, especially since you're playing to an international audience. And I think it adds to it, obviously, when the traditional tongue is introduced. But how did you feel being able to express in that way and how it fit with your character?
Well, with the story, it was important to make the character as original as possible. And when we talked about it and when we were developing, I don't even know if, we had the idea of the general international audience in terms of how far the film will travel. We were simply trying to make a film that they'd be able to understand. And so because of the way the characters were written, it was important to be able to fit those elements into it as far as the characters go. But we obviously do realize that as it is with every other film, whether it is a South American film, Latin American, or whatever, there are certain things that, if you watch the film, it's usually relative to them. But the most important thing is you're getting the story and the direction of what these people are doing, which generally for me was the most important thing, to be able to get the character to communicate with the people that watch it, irrespective of what the choices we make to develop it is. And I do hope that, you will get the people who will recognize the colloquialism, but you also hope that the rest of the audience will understand the character, his arc, and where he's going with it, basically. So that's what we try to do.
Kenneth, there were some references to the film going through the years of processing, to get to this point in time. And as anyone who is familiar with independent filmmaking, and obviously there's an audience full of folks here who are, financing and getting it done, those challenges, where did you gain your most support, to get it finally to this kind of showcasing?
I would say finally getting it done was as a result of support we got from the Rotterdam Film Festival, that is International Film Festival Rotterdam, and they have a funding body called Hubert Bell's Fund. And so when they read our script and they said, oh yeah, we're going to give you digital funding, that was actually the catalyst for us to move forward and get this production done. And immediately after that, of course, the project was still selected for the Durban Film Mart, which is where Pan-African film projects are actually presented to potential producers. And so, yes, I would say International Film Festival Rotterdam was actually the main place where we actually had, lots of support, and we said, okay, yeah, we can actually get this film done. And of course, we said we're actually going to do the film low budget, because, when we formed a production company, we said we have to do things low budget, because we have to think about how we can actually make our money back. It's not about making the big budget film, and yeah, if you make the big budget film in Nigeria, how do you intend to make your money back? And so that's our philosophy. When you formed this production company with Tom, we said it has to be something that we could actually be able to sell to people, and people can watch it and we'll get our money back. Because in Nigeria, you only have about 10 screens for a local film. So yeah, with 10 screens, and our biggest market is DVD. But of course, you have to go with cinema, because yeah, cinema gives you this prestige, and then of course it goes to DVD. But yeah, Rotterdam helped us in realizing this film.
I wanted to ask, when it's presented for funding, since the script evolved, was it taken on its face value originally and then changed, or the major market it came behind what the film represents now?
So the funding was based on a script. Sort of after we'd done all of our rewriting, that was the script that got funded. Actually, the structure of the story was a little bit different in the script. It was actually, so there's 4 main storylines. There's Charles and Chi-Chi, There's Bello, the guy who gets fired from his job in the office. There's Emeka, and then there's Babajide, the guy with the son who we thought was gay. And originally, the way we were going to tell the story, and maybe it was funny when Mahan said we weren't pretentious, because the way we originally structured the story, we were going to tell it like sort of non-sequentially as 4 short films that all sort of linked together, and it all made sense in the end. And then when we watched it back in a sort of a first cut, I just sort of watched it, and I remember feeling pity for any audience that would have to sit through our little experiment. So we went back to the drawing board and re-edited it. So the film that got funded was this slightly experimental sort of approach to storytelling. And maybe they were disappointed that they didn't get that in the end. Who knows? But it's done okay, so we're happy.
Oh, so you have a face that we'd like to see again, I'm sure. The mischievousness is showing on you right now. I'll just ask one more question of each of you, and then ask the audience if they have some insights to share or something they'd like to know. How were you cast? Are you friends of Kenneth? Are you friends of Tom? Did you hear me borrow a little bit of Tom's accent? Did you notice that?
So I met Kenneth when we were shooting something for the BBC World Service Trust in 2004 or 2003, sometime that far back. And he was one of the directors for the series that we're working on, and it was pretty much one of the biggest things at the time. And I had come off a reality TV show, and I was trying to get my career started. And then he was directing that, and I guess he thought that I had some range, I guess. And so when the script was ready, I remember he got in touch and said, look, I think we have a story that you might be interested in. And after I read it, I knew that even if they didn't have the money to pay, properly, I would do it, because I really, really liked it. And it was in a non-linear fashion at the time. So I really liked that sequence, much better than, but they're the producer and director. They decided what, but that's how I got hired anyway.
Well, there's a lot more I could ask, but I'm not sure of how much time I have, so I'm going to turn it over to the audience immediately. Are there any questions or comments from audience members? Help them feel welcome. Yes?
Oh, well, in Nigeria, in Africa, first of all, we have lots of music. Africans always live by music. And so, when we're actually going to do Confusion Hour, we said we wanted to do something Afrocentric. First of all, it was really inspired, like the first draft of the script, it was inspired by Fela Anikulapo Kuti. I don't know if you know Fela Kuti. Like, he's like really huge in Africa.
Here as well.
I always have to sell Fela, I'm sorry.
Everywhere.
And so, yes. So, in fact, what we actually wanted to do, what was written in the script is every storyline, like if you're watching, because it starts with, I think, like, was it Emeka's story? Like, every story has a title with Fela's music. You understand? Like, Chop and Quench, that's like Eat and Die. He miswrote. That's like Babajide saying, okay, like, he's like missing the road about his son. So yeah, we were actually really inspired by, African music, Nigerian music, highlight music, which is really huge. And so we said, instead of having these films, because I know a lot of people have seen Nollywood films, and yeah, they have like Celine Dion playing in the background and things like that. But we said, no, we actually want to put real African music in this film, and that is actually what we set out to do. And so when we put some of the highlight music, we found out that, in fact, some of the pop music that we had, like Iyanya, the song about my waist, all I want is your waist, Yeah. We said, okay, we can actually add it for the new generation, and of course the main halal music will actually go for the old generation. So we actually wanted to cut across. So yeah, that's what happened with the music.
Another question from the audience? Yes, gentleman over there.
Who wants to go first?
Okay. Okay. I'm actually going to say what I remember, and of course, Osi and Tom will complete it. But yeah, I know it's like really hard shooting this film. We shot it in 14 days, I think. Wow. And yeah, and when we're going to shoot it, this film is set in Jos. I come from Jos, Plateau State. That's the central point of Nigeria, where you're having all these things about Boko Haram and people killing people and things like that. I'm not really so proud of that. But the thing is, when we actually wanted to shoot, we said we're going to shoot in Jos. And of course, there was a crisis in Jos, which is actually people rising up in arms to kill other people. I mean, Christians fighting Muslims and things like that. And so we moved the production like 3 hours away from Jos, which is Kaduna. And when we're going to shoot in Kaduna, I think Osi and Ramsey landed in Abuja that same day, and there was a bomb blast again in Kaduna. And of course, that thing escalated to, Abuja, and it escalated to Kaduna. And so sometimes we had to be shooting under curfew. But I mean, that's like much I can remember. I'm sure they actually have stories to tell.
I mean, the main story I tell, and I tell this fully in the knowledge that my mum and dad are here tonight, is that I lied to them about which part of Nigeria I was in, because there was so much sort of talk in the news about the dangers of Kaduna. So I won't ever do that again. I actually feel really terrible saying that. The other thing I would just say about shooting films in Nigeria, and this, I mean, I live in the UK, and there's a lot of Nigerians in the UK, and they watch Nollywood films, and so because of what I do in Nigerian film, I end up hanging around with a lot of people in the Nigerian diaspora who make films, not necessarily in Nigeria. And, you know, Nollywood gets debated a lot, and it gets criticized a lot. And I can't tell you how challenging it can be. Some of the things, you know, it's very difficult to plan ahead. So, for example, when people are criticizing Nollywood films, they'll say, oh, these guys didn't plan for this, they didn't plan this right. But actually, if you're in Nigeria, you realize that plans aren't really worth the paper they're written on. It's actually about sort of having to improvise to a constantly evolving situation. So this is sort of one of my little bugbears, is people sort of being critical of Nigerian film don't necessarily understand quite how challenging it is, sort of things that you wouldn't necessarily expect. You know, I mean, just to give a small example, I remember when we were doing the sort of second batch of shooting, and I was in Nigeria, and I just observed Kenneth, who's sort of the director, and I mean, I'm supposed to be the producer, but he was doing a lot of the producing. You know, I can't even remember all the details. We had a camera lined up. Oh, but that fell through because they hired it out to someone else at the last minute, so we suddenly had to find a camera. Same with the sound equipment. And he's not able to sort of think about directing. He's having to sort of constantly hustle for that. Locations, you agree a location, suddenly it turns out the day you turn up, someone else is on duty, no one's told them. And then, you know, fortunately it didn't happen while I was on set, but I know that when I was on my way back to UK, these guys had a whole run-in with the police. And this is just, it can be really challenging. So I think it's incredible that Nigeria has such a strong film industry, given how hard it is, and they just have nothing but respect. Anyone who makes a film in Nigeria, I really sort of admire it.
Oh, see, for you, I'm sure you would have been able to work things out, but were you all like hit up for anything? Because you know, you come into communities, at least I know folks here in New York, you know, their permits and all that, but sometimes the community is really set upon, and the neighbors uptown where I live, they want to make sure at least a couple of folks can pay their rent after the film crew has come and gone. So what did you encounter?
Well, actually, on the very first day of shoots, and I remember clearly it was the 1st of October, it was our country's Independence Day, and we had just had, Ramsey and I, the guy who plays Emeka, had just had a breakfast with the president, and we had caught a taxi headed to Kaduna to shoot. And it was funny because I think that's the first time I'd ever heard a bomb in Nigeria, but I didn't even know that's what it was. So we're both in our hotel rooms in the same hotel, and there was this really interesting sound. Interesting because I never heard it before, and the place was quaking, but I wasn't sure what it was. So I thought maybe it was some fireworks gone wrong, in celebration of independence or something. Until we got in the taxi and we're heading to shoot, and like 5 minutes away from us, all these cars had gone up in flames, and it's crazy. And obviously by the time we got to Kaduna, it was the first day, but we're pretty shaken up, just realizing what we missed, how close it was. And we were there for 3 weeks, actually. We were there for 21 days in Kaduna, and we did not have any hassles in terms of community, but I think it was just really hard to, be able to shoot small budget, and obviously as an actor, I love the script, but there are the days where you're just like, kill me now. And I know sometime in the middle of shoot, Tom had to call from the UK to apologize, for the state of things. It was a really, really hard time to shoot, and this is me shooting out of town, for 3 weeks, and the budget was so small. I mean, they're my friends now, but at the time they were my friends, but the money was so small.
Yes.
Like so small. And you have to break your back to make sure that you're giving a good performance, but we tried.
Kenneth, please speak to what opportunity there may have been for local folks to see the film and what their responses have been, if there has been such an opportunity.
Okay, the film was actually released in theaters. We had little problems with distribution, but yeah, it was released in Nigerian theaters, and it's still going to come out on DVDs. And of course, it was out there in some awards in Nigeria. Like, yeah, it won the best film at the African Movie Academy Awards. It was at the African International Film Festival, and yeah, it won Best Picture too, and a couple of awards at the Best of Nollywood Film Awards. I mean, Screenplay, Director of the Year, these things. So yeah, I would say back home, I mean, the reception has been like really great. But I would say a lot of people will actually see it when it comes out on DVD, because of course we only have 10 screens in Nigeria. So, yeah.
Audience questions all the way in the back. Yes, the sister, I think it's purple.
Oh yeah, seriously, in Nigeria is almost like a rat race. Yeah, almost. You're almost always on your own. I always talk about how I was inspired by other people, but when I'm talking about inspiration, I always have to look abroad for inspiration, because you don't really have people to encourage you while you're coming up as a filmmaker. Yeah. So yeah, you always have to start quoting strange names like Alejandro Gonzalez Inarritu, like Quentin Tarantino, Fernando Meirelles. Oh yeah, they inspire me and stuff. But I always say young people always need encouragement. And so I know that personally I've run a lot of workshops. Like the last project that we did as a company was a TV series called How I Made My First Million with Tom. And I know that we had to use young people from Jos, which is actually where I'm from and where the film school is. And so yeah, trying to like use them so that it would give them that industry exposure. Because this is how it works in Nigeria. You go to look for a job. They say, oh yeah, do you have any experience? Of course you don't have any experience because no one has given you any opportunity. So how are you going to get that opportunity or get that experience if you don't have an opportunity? So, I mean, yeah, it's always really hard, but I always tell this older generation of filmmakers how it is. And I'm really glad that after making the conviction now, I've been able to meet some African filmmakers who are really encouraging, but that would have really helped if it had actually started from the beginning.
I mean, can I just add something to that? I mean, I sort of agree with what Kenneth is saying, is that it's definitely not one family and one love. And like in the distribution, I mean, Kenneth mentioned we had some problems with distribution. It wasn't for lack of demand for the film. It was, we made some decisions that were, in retrospect, stupid decisions. But the problem is that there's no sort of conventional wisdom because nobody helps each other out by telling each other, you know, here's the sensible way to distribute your film. It's sort of like, you don't know who to listen to. But having said that, so it would have really helped to have had a lot of information we now have, 6 months ago even. But having said all of that, I think that it is improving. Now, we've sort of made a decision to always be open in sharing our experiences. And it's not necessarily experiences about the technicalities of filmmaking. Often it's the experience of like the business side and sort of how to sort of distribute your film within Nigeria. And we have sort of begun to feel that there is a bit of a sort of a community that feels the same way, that actually it doesn't help anyone if film directors are sort of withholding information from each other, but that actually we should just be open and honest and share sort of good and bad experiences.
OC, the craft of acting, what opportunities are there for you to share your skill sets with young people since that's brought up?
I'll be honest with you, it's pretty much in the same way for actors in Nigeria because everyone wants to know what you've done, and I guess it's pretty much the same across the world, but it feels like in the West it's easier for people to say you look like you can do the job and they'll take an opportunity with you. But in Nigeria, it's so much more difficult, and I know that there are a ton of people who thought I showed up from nowhere. Apparently, I've been working on stage for the first 5 years of my career. You know, and I've been working on this for 13 years now. But I've only come into some sort of visibility in the last 2 years, thereabouts, 2.5. And I get constantly bombarded by people who are also trying to get into the business, asking me, how did you do it? What was your strategy? How can we get in? You know, and I honestly wish that I could tell them these are the 5 steps to becoming a distinguished actor in Nigeria, but it's that volatile. You just don't know. And I say to them, the most important thing is I've done exactly the same thing that I've been doing for the last 13 years, over the last 2.5 years. And it just seemed like, you know, collisions started happening because films I had done that hadn't popped out in a while started popping out at the same time. But I know that as far as it goes, the things that I've tried to get them to understand is you have to choose the kind of work you want to do. You have to decide how long you want to be in the business. You have to be hungry for a bit. It's a given. And at the end of the day, if you're consistent, I've gotten opportunities to be able to speak, you know, and we have, open mic theaters and stuff like that. And people ask you to come over and have conversations, seminars for all of that stuff. And I lend my help as much as I can.
Yes, right there, yes.
Truth is, I personally don't like to mess with people's writing. And so I like to keep it within the boundaries of what is written, except, of course, the director says otherwise, and if they let you go. But most importantly, as far as it goes with developing the character, there a ton of things that were not on script there that, you know, you try and do, and he gives you the vision of what he would like for the character to look like and how he'd sound and whatnot. But he did let me, throwing some of those nuances, and things that just flesh out the words, as it were. And I think we really had a good time, working on it. So we did not have issues with, oh, you're going over, and just ad-libbing. So no, I didn't ad-lib too much, but just developing the character, I try to keep it as original.
This guy has like a magnetic memory, like in terms of knowing his lines perfectly. It's like incredible. And then he not only that, other characters will be struggling with their lines and he'll be telling them exactly what their lines are as well, which probably like embarrassed them a bit, but I was amazed.
Okay. Yes, right there. One. Pick your best one. They just gave me a high sign. Needle eye viewers, very good.
Okay.
Please respond,
Yeah,
because I only have a few more minutes.
Yeah,
until.
yeah. So if I'm going to say that about the car that you're talking about is, she said, I don't think so. I don't know. Do you understand?
And they were
While
referring
the
to
car
the
has
windows,
actually been
not
fixed. Yeah, I understand. Yeah, and yeah, most of the time, I mean, it's not when you get into police station. Yeah, I mean, when they kick you, like I have been kicked before in a police station. Yeah, let me tell you a story. No, I'm coming. Yeah, let me just tell you a story. So like, I mean, I went home to meet my mom, and yeah, apparently they were in police station with my sisters and stuff, and something happened with the neighbor and stuff like that. And I went with my camera, because I mean, someone had hit my mom, and there was like a lump on her forehead. And I said, okay, yeah, I'm a smart ass, I'm a filmmaker, I'm actually going to take a picture. And the police were like, what? Camera in a police station? They wanted to snatch the camera from me, and I was holding my camera, and they were kicking me really hard, you understand? Yeah, they kicked me, and they were actually hitting me with the butt of their gun. You understand? But at the end of the day, understand, I didn't have like anything on my face. So it mustn't be like anytime, sorry, I'm coming. It mustn't be like anytime you enter a police station and you get kicked by people, you're actually going to come out with like things on your faces or like anything. I mean, I'm from Nigeria, like I know how it actually happens. So sometimes, you understand, some of these things like in films, they get exaggerated, but we actually wanted to stay true to life as possible, because I have actually experienced it.
So have I.
And yeah, if you're talking about, I mean, getting getting when you're actually talking about, oh yeah, Nollywood, you understand, and oh yeah, the criticism and stuff like that, my dear, it is actually a whole. You cannot actually say, oh, you're going to like, oh, remove this thing from this thing. I actually want to sit down as a scholar and say, oh yeah, I mean, like, man, you guys are doing rubbish and stuff like that. Oh yeah, this film is like rubbish, but I'm not actually going to do that. There's something that my lecturer always says: it takes hard work to even make a bad film.
Okay. Quick question here. I think that's a good note on which to close. All right, I'm going to let you get in. Just one more very, very quickly, please.
Do you want to go first?
OC?
Okay. Well, the thing with Nigeria as well is, as an actor, you have to be careful, because if you choose the kind of work that you do, the point at which the industry is right now, you'll get to a certain point where you're just going to get up to the roof, and then you're just going to be doing films and doing films and doing films, and you're just acting for acting's sake. So I'm trying not to be that actor who's just working for the sake of working. So at this point, I'm looking for, representation out in the UK. I had a couple meetings 2 weeks ago, and then trying to see what you might be able to find in North America as well. But some interesting collaborations also coming up. I've had some very interesting meetings, but yeah, and we're reading scripts all the time.
Tom?
So the thing we did immediately after Confucian Noir is a TV series called How I Made My First Million. That's been completed. We have another film in the pipeline, and maybe Kenneth can talk about that a bit more. And just because this relates back to the film, so the character who played Bello's wife, Isabella, the wife, the main character, the main female character, that was actually her acting debut, but she's actually a writer. She's the head writer on a TV show called Tinsel, which, if you're familiar with Nigerian entertainment, that's the biggest show in Nigeria. We're developing, it's like a soap opera, we're developing a TV series with her. So that's another thing that's maybe longer term in the pipeline.
Kenneth?
Oh, okay. We're actually making a film called This is Lagos. It's a gangster film, fused with music. And so it's definitely going to be, in budgetary terms, it's going to be higher than this one, but yeah, that's the next one that we're working on, so we're still sourcing for funding.
Kenneth Gyang, director, Tom Rowlands-Rees, and Ose Ukeje. Let's give them all a round of applause, and thank you so very much. Thank you, New York African Film Festival, Mahen.